So, advanced functions, something that doesn't come up too often in Make. However, it's important to get familiar with it just in case you do come across it. So, if you look at my screen, you'll see that I have four tools modules and one Microsoft 365 calendar module. So, basically, what I have in the first one is a date value with the date for January 12th, 2022. And then in the second one, I have a time value for 3 p.m. And then in this third one, I have a date time value that combines the date and time. And lastly is a new date time that uses the advanced function to parse the date time, the new date time value, right? And then at the very end, I have a Microsoft 365 calendar module that just uses that new date time to create a start date and end date. And so what you'll see here, the reason that we have to kind of go through all these difficult steps is that there is no start time field for us to fill in for Microsoft 365 calendar. And so what we have to do is embed the time within the date. And how we do that is Make has this little thing that allows us to combine dates and times together within functions. So if I go here and I hover over this function, you can see that across these four different examples at the end, where after the equals and the gray text, you'll see that it has a whole bunch of characters that don't really make sense. However, this is a format that Make accepts the date and time in. So you can see that it has the date and then T and then a time. So then here you'll see that for this 403 or this 403 example, 403 p.m., you can see that it has the date, the T, and then the time 1603 in each one, right? And so this is just one way to combine date and time within Make. And that this isn't always the case. You don't always have to do this, but for certain instances like here where there is no date or time, or at least there's no time field to fill in, we're going to have to create the date time parse to get, like we have to put it together. So if I show you guys, this is what it looks like, the expression. This is an example of how it works. So you take the date, the format, and then put it together. And so I basically have this similar format right here where I have the date and then I also have the time put together. And so it takes the date time, which we know has the dates plus the time in it, right? And again, the date is January 12th, 2022, and the time is 3 p.m. And so together, right, it just has a little space right here because you can't actually put these as separate things here in date and time. It has to be one variable or one value that it's taking and not two or three or multiple. So essentially what I have here is the Y's, which is the year, and then dash month, and then dash DD. Now, if this had slashes, I would put slashes in here, but because it's dashes, I have dashes here to represent the difference between the year, the month, and the date. And then after that, I have two lowercase h's to represent the hour, and then two lowercase m's to represent the minute, and then a lowercase a to represent whether it's AM or PM. And so basically, after filling that out, that's going to be the result of this module here. And so what we can do is we can take that value and put that here in the start date for the Microsoft 365 calendar module. And so for end date, I have yet another date function, right? Except it's not the one that we saw before. It's one that's called add hours. And you can see here there's a bunch of different ones: add seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years, seconds, etc. Or excuse me, setting seconds, minutes, hours, and etc. And so what we're doing is we're using add hours because we want the meeting or the calendar event to end in 1 hour. And so what I do is I go to add hours, I put the same date time that I have for the beginning of the event, and I just put 1 here. If I wanted the meeting to end in 2 hours, I would do this. If I wanted the meeting to end in 3 hours, I do that, right? If I wanted the meeting to actually end an hour before, I would put -1, but that would result in an error and that wouldn't make any sense. And so we just want to put 1 here. Then I'll hit OK, and I'll show you guys right now I don't have any events from my January 2022. And after I run this scenario, you can see that there is a green light all the way through, which means that the event was created. And you can see the start date here is January 12, 2022, 3 p.m. and it ends on the same date at 4 p.m. And if I go to my calendar, you can see it just got created as a report review that starts at 3 p.m. and ends at 4 p.m. If I wanted to, I can show you guys what it would look like if I wanted the meeting to end in 2 hours real quick. I would just have to go in here, change this 1 to a 2, and then hit OK and run it. And again, you'll see that the meeting gets created, and instead of 4 p.m., it ends at 5 p.m. And lastly, if I tried to do something like this, it would most likely result in an error because that is not possible. A meeting cannot end before it starts. And so here we have an error because, yeah, it's impossible to do that. And you can see right here, it has the end date set as 1 p.m. before the start date, which doesn't make any sense. And so that's why you want to make sure that this is accurate right here, because otherwise it would not work. So hopefully this gave you guys a bit of an insight into how advanced functions work in Make.